Welcome, everyone. We're really happy that you're here. Thanks for coming out. We are here in solidarity with a global movement for a free Palestine, and we are here in support of the A15 defendants who are going to trial over the charges that they are accused of from an interstate blockade on April 15th of I-5. April 15th was a global day of action specifically focused on economic disruption to stop the economies of the countries who are supporting and economically benefiting from the genocide of Palestine. 82 countries, or 82 cities around the world participated, including our Eugene, Oregon. I-5 was blocked for 2 hours and 62 people were arrested. Now 20 of them are going to trial, and we are here demanding the Lane County DA, Chris Perosa, drop the charges and dismiss these cases with no admission of guilt. We know that it is always right to protest during genocide. So to kick us off and to ground us in the movement that we are fighting with and for, we have Shakar Afrati here to read some of his original poetry.
Thank you. I'm humbled to be here. I feel totally inadequate. I have the utmost respect for people who stand up in the way that they did on April 15th and beyond. Mama's right over there. You want to stay with me? She's right over there. Give it up for Ren, everybody. Oh, thank you. Stick your neck out for someone who's got a boot on theirs. Show me someone who cares for more than the skin on their back. For those that lack, attacked by the state, never entered debates. Stick your neck out for someone who's got a boot on theirs. Someone who stares as they dare to dance their demons in the streets. Bare-knuckle kneecaps knocking against concrete cops. Caring's a lost cause. The law's not gonna pause their brutality on black and brown skin. My kin, we mustn't be deterred by the odds or the chains on the mushy brains. This resistance is gonna run through time, and I'm down to decry the crimes. Let's see each other to that sunset awaiting us all, watching empires fall. One second. The sea went to Palestine and said, "Lend me your tears, for I have an ocean to fill." Palestine looked out to the sea and said, "Your request is certainly to be expected. We seem to have an abundance of them, and no one seems willing to witness them. We find ourselves in a most disagreeable predicament now that you too make this request. Is there nothing to be gained by our joy? Do our children not make your heart leap for life? Is our cuisine not to your liking? Does our music burn your ears? We certainly intended no harm. But back to the matter of tears. You're the sea, after all, and not to be toyed with. We can loan you our tears, but give us our beloved back." "Who is your beloved?" asked the sea. "Don't you know? You lean on her all the time. It's the home of your waves, the cup that contains your vibrant undulations. The land. Give us our land back, and you can have our tears." Thank you. I have one more. This one's called Bitch. The more Israel beats down on Palestine, the more it destroys itself and plunges further into its true self, that of a monstrous genocidal bitch of Western imperialism. The more it ravages Gaza, bombs children in their beds, buries people alive, and pale-faced lies, the more we see the grim truth of the repulsive Zionist regime. Is this what hell means? Is this Gaza's lesson to humanity? To show us our own patheticness, unable to stop these atrocities, with bleeding eyes crying that our hearts are not dying but growing more savage with righteous rage. Thanks.
Hell yeah, let's hear it for Shakar. Thank you so much. Okay, up next, one of the A15 defendants would like to share a message to the DA and an appeal to the Eugene community about the U.S.'s complicity in the Gaza genocide. So let's hear it from Madison.
On tax day, April 15th, 6 protesters occupied a stretch of Interstate 5 in Eugene in protest of the U.S. government funding Israel's genocide in Gaza using taxpayer dollars. Eugene joined hundreds of activists in more than 82 cities around the U.S. and the world to shut it down for Palestine. At the time, it had been over 6 months since Israel began its brutal genocidal assault on Gaza, which by April had left 33,800 Palestinians dead. 85% of Gazans displaced, and the entire population of Gaza, 50% of which are children, struggling to survive. This is due to the near constant fall of US-made bombs and a targeted starvation campaign that's created famine conditions as Israeli forces violently block humanitarian aid. Shame. Since October 2023, people of conscience in Eugene and around the world have been calling for an end to this colonial violence and demanding that the US end all military support to Israel. When testimonies at city council meetings, thousands of phone calls and letters to elected officials, and months of marching through the streets of Eugene failed to move politicians to conscientious action, then we must do more. This is why protesters stepped onto the I-5 that day. It has been over 4 months since then, and the horrors in Gaza are markedly worse. While the official death count stands at nearly 41,000, a recent study by The Lancet reports that the actual death toll could exceed 186,000. An astounding 90% of Gaza's population is now internally displaced. Families are forced to take shelters in refugee camps or schools, which are in turn targeted by Israel occupation forces, like when Israel bombed the Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza 63 times, killing at least 91 Palestinians and injuring 251 more. These intensified attacks have also destroyed over half of Gaza's structures, including nearly all of the city's hospitals. A dire sanitation situation is now emerging as the mass destruction has left the city with no water and no running sewage system. The need for conscientious action is as, if not more, urgent today as it was on April 15th. We believe it is every U.S. citizen's obligation to oppose the use of our tax dollars to facilitate war crimes. U.S. laws, too, prohibit military assistance to foreign security force units that violate human rights with impunity. And in June of 2024, the International Court of Justice found the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories illegal under international law. It is clear that the U.S. legal system picks and chooses what laws to enforce when it comes to Palestine, prosecuting protesters domestically while aiding and abetting genocide abroad. Right. But legality alone does not determine what is right. Our moral compass demands that the conditions that the people of Gaza are subjected to must end. So we followed the example of a long line of those who took to the highway in protest of the Vietnam War and South African apartheid. In 1970, just 5 hours north of us, the first anti-war freeway protest took place in Seattle. The day after, 4 Kent state demonstrators were shot dead by the Ohio National Guard. As is the case with the Vietnam War and the South African apartheid, history will absolve our so-called crime. We ask, who is more criminally culpable? Those who perpetuate genocide or those who will go to such lengths to end it? On April 15th, over 127 law enforcement officers from 6 agencies were deployed to the I-5, with one witness saying it was the most police presence they have ever seen at a protest. Despite the 2-to-1 ratio of officers to protesters, officers were violent in their arrests, deploying pepper balls at close range into groups of protesters attempting to disperse who were no longer on the freeway. Upon release from jail, many defendants were offered plea deals by the district attorney, who promised diversion upon pleading guilty and completing 6 to 12 months of probation. One of our co-defendants who was not offered a diversion deal is a Palestinian teenager. A deal that is offered to some, but not to all, despite identical charges, is no deal at all. Today and every day, we stand in solidarity with our comrades and all of our Palestinian siblings suffering under Israeli violence. The resources that Lane County has funneled into prosecuting our cases so far are immense and a gross misuse of public funds that should instead go to needed social and public services such as affordable housing, a hospital, bike lanes, or fixing our crumbling roadways. This repression of protest is part of the uptick of suppression across several political issues in Lane County, like when a few months ago, housing justice advocates were charged with trespassing while they assisted unhoused neighbors during a sweep on a long-established encampment. Like those comrades, we refuse to be intimidated into silence when confronting state violence. The millions of dollars that go into sweeps, prosecuting protesters, and genocide could be much better spent on the desperately needed social services that we need right here in our community. The city of Eugene perpetuates similar forms of state violence that even liberals and moderates have condemned in Gaza. Hundreds of our neighbors have been displaced by way of sweeps in recent months, and the technology used to surveil the unhoused across town was first developed by the Israeli company Celebrate. The EPD contracts with a company called Mobile Pro Systems that manufactures the Guardian trailers that have been installed around Eugene and Springfield since the onset of the COVID pandemic, when the local housing crisis reached a critical point. Our local police force is taking a page out of Israel's playbook. These abuses of power, misappropriation of taxpayer dollars, and mass surveillance and dispossession are unconscionable both here and abroad. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. It is no wonder then why community members felt compelled to act on April 15th and why we continue to resist the state's prosecution. After a summer of attempted and failed negotiations between defendants and the district attorney's office, 19 of the 52 individuals arrested on April 15th are set to go to trial in protest of the DA's refusal to treat all defendants fairly and of the state's ongoing complicity in genocide. On this date, nearly a week out from the first trial date among the 19 remaining defendants, we call on the DA to drop all charges against those who protest against the genocide of Palestinians. We demand an immediate, permanent ceasefire and an end to the occupation. And above all, we demand Palestinian liberation. Free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Fuck yeah. Thank you. Okay, next up we have a speech written by a U of O grad student who studies Palestinian liberation. He couldn't be here today, so it's going to be read by Bex.
I am one of the original 62, and I'm one of the still 19. And thank you, Tali, for writing this.
Thank you.
Context. There's always context. We need to remember the wider and the more specific. Israel's recent actions against Lebanon and Gaza are part of a long history of violence and dispossession against Palestinians, rooted in the ongoing Nakba, catastrophe in Arabic. Just this past week, Israel launched a sophisticated attack against Lebanese and Syrian people, aiming to kill members of Hezbollah for contesting Israel's actions in Palestine. By planting explosives in pagers and other communications technology destined for these countries' economies, Israel's tampered devices indiscriminately killed dozens and injured thousands, mostly working-class people. This attack exemplifies the global scale of Israel's actions and their impact beyond Palestine. Israel has produced a people for whom life is laden with terror and anxiety, where social bonds can be ripped away in mere seconds, and where Palestinian deaths become incomprehensible numbers instead of vanished dreams, mourning families, and embodied traumas. Israel's genocide is inextricably linked to global capitalism and Western imperialism, the international political expression of Western capitalists' competition to accumulate more and more private wealth by dispossessing Palestinians and many others while exploiting the labor of billions. The Nakba, beginning in 1947, saw the violent expulsion of over 700,000 Palestinians from historic Palestine. This occurred under British colonial rule through the mandate system established by the League of Nations. Rather than facilitating Palestinian self-determination as claimed, this system deepened Palestine's colonization. It enabled further collaboration between British and Zionist colonizers and supported massive flows of capital from Western powers and Jewish capitalists globally into Zionist settlements. A breaking point was reached with the 1947 partition plan, which proposed dividing Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. Despite Palestinians constituting 70% of the population and owning most of the land, they were allocated only 45% of the territory. Despite mass Palestinian resistance, Zionist forces expelled Palestinians and established control over crucial territories. The State of Israel was declared on May 14, 1948. Since then, Palestinians in the West Bank, Gaza, Israel, and the diaspora have continuously resisted their dispossession and the ongoing genocide of their people. This year's Israeli campaign in Gaza is to date the most brutal, accelerated, and technologically sophisticated expression of Zionism's ongoing elimination of Palestinians since 1948. Israel's alliance with the United States has played a pivotal role in shaping the political landscape of the Middle East. This partnership, operating through both military support and neoliberal economic policies, has been instrumental in subordinating the wider Arab region to American interests. Since 1948, Israel has received over $158 billion in aid from the U.S. alone, with about $63 billion coming after 2001. This increased support coincided with the Second Intifada, a period of intensified Palestinian resistance from 2000 to 2005. This Intifada was a response to the Oslo Accords of the 1990s, mediated by the U.S. and UN, which ultimately undermined Palestinian liberation efforts. The Accords led to the creation of the Palestinian Authority, often criticized for its collusion with Israel, and imposed neoliberal economic policies on Palestine. The result was a deeper entrenchment of Israel's control over Palestinian territories and growing economic dependency on Israel. This dynamic is starkly illustrated in Gaza. Prior to October 7th, 2023, Israel had effectively transformed Gaza into an open-air prison. It exerted tight control over Gaza's access to essential resources such as water, electricity, and food. Israel managed food imports down to the calorie to keep Gazans just above starvation. Gaza's economy was deliberately stifled through forced reliance on Israeli imports and heavy taxation on foreign goods. This level of control allowed Israel to completely cut off Gaza's means of subsistence at will, as witnessed in the aftermath of October 7th. In return for the massive influx of military aid from Western powers, Israel has turned its occupation of Palestine into a laboratory for innovating repression techniques and technologies. These, once refined, are exported internationally. American police have been trained by Israeli military officials and experts, as in Cop City in Atlanta, while so-called battle-tested surveillance and policing techniques are sold from India to the USA. All of this makes Israel a significant player in the global repression trade and military-industrial complex. This arrangement has legitimized Israel's ongoing control over Palestinian territories, reinforcing U.S. imperialist interests in the Middle East, and severely undermined Palestinian economic independence and political autonomy. The result is a deeply entrenched system of oppression, sustained by a complex web of international political and economic relationships. 1. Israel cannot colonize Palestine without Western imperial powers. 2. Israel's occupation is distinctively capitalist in how it is produced. Israel relies on foreign capital, exports the repression it produces, strangles Palestinian economies, and manipulates international supply chains to continue its settler regime. Israel's techniques of domination target the working classes and peasantry of Palestine and its neighboring states as collective punishment for resistance against its rules. 4. The struggle against Israel's occupation and actions against Palestinians must be global, anti-capitalist, and waged by the working peoples of all nations against those who uphold ties, political and economic, with Israel. In the USA, this demands fighting American imperialism from the heart of the empire. We have gathered to send a clear message to the Eugene political establishment. We will not stand for the continued action against Palestinians, and we must sever all ties that enable this. If the state, politicians, bureaucrats, police, courts, or businesses prop up and protect these ties, then we must act outside what supporters of genocide deem acceptable. Our comrades on trial for A15 taught us a crucial lesson. We must disrupt business as usual. We must take this struggle to our workplaces, especially in our unions. We must take our struggle to every American institution that upholds Israel and settler colonialism here and everywhere. We, the exploited and oppressed peoples, must build coalitions with one another, strengthen our bonds and care for one another, and take on our ruling class here, which supports Israel's actions there in Palestine. A crucial part of this struggle is protecting our own who have done just that and are punished by the state, our friends and comrades on trial for A15. This is a necessary form of care our movement embodies for one another. Yeah. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Thank you, Tali, for writing that, and Bex for reading it. Yeah, it's worth noting that because 19 people have chosen to go to trial, that means that Lane County is responsible for 19 jury trials in between October and January, which is like 1 to 2 trials a week for the entire fall and winter, beginning of winter. And that's a lot of county resources, and it's a lot of days. That could be 20 days of trial of court, that could be 40 days of court, that could be 60 days of court, depending on how many days these trials take. Everyone has different strategies that they're working on, and we're going to be organizing around those court cases. So the first one is October 3rd. Mark your calendars. It sounds like we're going to be packing the court for that one. So this is a really good way to continue to keep the movement alive here and to pressure these assholes to drop the fucking charges. So here's a chant about that. Hold on. Drop the charges, free them all. Chris Perosa, drop them all. Drop the charges, free them all. Chris Perosa, drop them all. The charges, free them all. Chris Perosa, drop them all. Thank you. Okay, we have one more speech. It is by another A15 defendant, and she's going to share her speech with you. So let's bring up Anna.
Hey, homos. Just setting the stage here. I just made a bunch of changes actually to my speech because I feel inspired to say other things. But thank you all so much for showing up and for folks who have spoken and read ahead of me. So yeah, so I am one of the original 62 protesters arrested on the I-5 in Wayne County.
Louder, honey!
Okay. I never get that feedback. Be louder? Are you fucking kidding me? Okay. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm one of the original 62 arrested on the highway on April 15th as part of a global act of solidarity with Palestine. I'm also a working class queer Mizrahi Jew organizing on unceded Kalapuya territory with JVP Eugene. And I'm here today to advocate for my comrades who are preparing to go to trial for this action, as nobody should be punished for protesting a genocide. So, you know, I think that there's a ton of emphasis right now on this sort of local group of defendants. I think it's great that Penny read to us earlier just like the broader context of A15 as being a sort of series of escalated actions that refused to let business as usual happen. Ports were blocked in Yemen, ports were blocked all over the fucking world. And every city did it differently because solidarity doesn't mean ownership, it means affinity, right? So this is how Eugene decided to do it. So yeah, I think just re-centering all of this ruckus in our devotion to a free Palestine is the most important thing here, right? Okay, so yeah, I want to maybe just say it's not lost on me here, this like microcosmic replication of the carceral state. I am a white passing Jew with US citizenship, and I was offered a diversion deal by the court that was pretty fucking sweet, to be honest. And my Palestinian comrade is being disproportionately punished. This is a microcosmic example of what's happening in Palestine now. We all took our own inventory and decided what we could afford to lose, and we went out there and did it. And it always fucking ends up that the people who can afford to lose the least are disproportionately punished. Really just wanting to hold that and also tie it back to the fact that our Palestinian political prisoner comrades have been stripped of their rights before they were ever even locked up. In their name, we challenge ourselves to continue the fight against the global carceral state. We say, free all political prisoners worldwide. All prisoners are political prisoners. Taking to the highway to disrupt business as usual demonstrates a ferocity and a hunger for a world without borders, cages, and walls. A world where we can be creative together, vision together, and destroy and rebuild the world we want to see. During this time of uprising, we're looking at a hot iron ready to strike, to bend toward a new direction, one mapped by the many successful struggles for justice around the globe. Land back and nothing else. Reparations and nothing else. The right of return and nothing else. Our Palestinian comrades have gone so many generations without seeing the world rise up in solidarity with them. Now is the time to ramp up and double our efforts. We will not back down from putting pressure on Zionism and capitalism and colonialism until it remains only relics and stains on history.
Fuck yeah, let's hear it for Anna. Brick by brick, wall by wall, free the prisoners, free them all. Brick by brick, wall by wall, free the prisoners, free them all. Okay. Okay, so the last thing, just to end this, we have a comrade who was one of the defendants jailed, and they wrote a poem that they were going to share, and then they got called out on fire right before this. So I'm going to read it. It was written in the Lane County Jail during this action. If the pigs take you, know that after your comrades will breach the walls with song. If the pigs take you, know that even if before we have been alone, never will we after. If the pigs take you, know that we'll fight together to be able to fight again together after. If the pigs take you, know that in Gaza, in Qiyam, in Attica, the walls that stood against song, against struggle, against the sky, forged in human breath beyond the barbed wire. Hands like ours have torn them down into the barricades of our hope, have held them on to love like embers. I'm only sorry it has taken so long for the reverberations of their demolition to reach us. If it's any consolation, I know the distance between feels the burden. It is carrying from far past the future. We are on the wrong side of the present, but we are on the right side of the past. If there is to be any future at all, martyr Walid Daka, imprisoned for looking for the future where it is, buried alive, wrote, "We are part of history, and history, as we know, is a past that has ended, but we are an ongoing past that does not end." If I were to say we're so far behind, if I were to say we're so far away from where we should be, if I said the world should be burning for what is being done, we should be burning, the world should be burning for what is being done, that what would be a normal condition for a world under occupation, a whole world under siege, anything else would be forged and not worthy of those who disappear and evade and refuse to surrender. I know that you will answer, we belong to the wound in time. Do not curse the sky for having forsaken you. If the revolutionary gravedigger of the future were so tenderly to tell us on the eve of exile, martyrdom, or imprisonment, I do not ask you to bear what I have not borne myself. I do not demand of you what I am incapable of doing. I invite you to a rebellion I live, and I urge you to live a life I have chosen, for I am on the path ahead of you, and you are the following behind. So make haste. Have we? When we walk out of the cages, when we walk past the walls into our comrades' arms, holding the memories of catastrophe, suturing the past that we must inherit its struggle, with the future that remains open so long as we heed its call, will we? Do not blame the circumstances, my friends. Try to demolish the walls. Even if the future imprisoned behind them could fly, it will not escape us. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up, but before we do that, I just want to give you Chris Perosa's phone number. So if you could all take out your phones. Also, Food Not Bombs has sandwiches. Thank you for being here, Food Not Bombs. Okay, are you all ready to save Chris Perosa's phone number into your phone so you can call him all week? Okay. 541-682-4261. Call him and tell him to drop the charges and let these people go with no admission of guilt.